Happy Wednesday, everybody. Welcome into this edition of CanesInSight Daily. This is CanesInSight Live. I'm Peter Ariz alongside Mike Ryan. D-Money, man. The curious case of our good friend D-Money, getting up and going and leaving us in the middle of this amazing stretch in the middle of a season. Mario said that obviously you got to start looking ahead to the opponent in the bye week, Mike. And this guy is over there in the Mediterranean right now, doing God knows what. It's a little, I'm bewildered, Mike.
You want to go 1-0 every week, and that includes the bye week where you want to remain locked in, stay on top of your scouting, stay on top of your film study. And I got to admit, been a little messy around CanesInSight. I don't know how a trip to Greece just falls out of the sky. Look, I'm not without my own accountability, right? I need to be accountable. I am soaking wet right now because I went to the CanesInSight studios, which they were happy to see me, and they were apparently readily available, but I guess I misread that situation. Now, granted, I got a text while I was in the middle of the Levitard show, and that's hard for me to do. It's hard for me to defend the Canes on the air from an asinine show 24 hours ago and also read texts as to where I'm creating content. But buck stops here. I messed that up. D-Money has messed multiple things up, including today's start time, which we were never talking 30s. It was always very even numbers.
There was never the situation of being in the middle of the hour there.
Well, we got a lot to get to, and I want to talk about the game. I know you guys have talked extensively. I really enjoyed post-game Pete and all that, but interesting narrative, and I think my day job is probably most guilty. Now, there is a notion, which I think is a ridiculous one, that perhaps Miami isn't that good because Notre Dame's not very good. I mean, they've lost twice, and Florida, we know they're not very good, and USF, apparently, Peter, people aren't listening to your post games, and they're allowing the narrative to shift because of how badly they were beaten by Miami, that they've just lumped them into the pile of not
good. Win over South Carolina State, by the way. We can't leave that out of their resume.
Yeah, that game was tight, and then let's just say that third quarter got away from South Carolina State. But all right, I talked about this some on Levitard show, so I'm like, all right, let's dissect this. We're not counting Bethune, even though Bethune put more yards on Miami than Florida did. Notre Dame, USF, who got beat so badly they got sent to others receiving votes, and Florida. Miami represents 60% of their losses. So I guess Miami should not win these games, so you can think that the opponents are good. I don't understand what we're doing. If USF came in a Hard Rock Stadium and either hung tight with Miami to the very end or beat Miami, people would be arguing for USF being a top 10 team in the nation. If they beat Miami, they'd probably receive number one votes. That's what Dave Portnoy was saying, that they should be the number one team in the nation. Also, and I let it happen right in front of me, people think that because that was a 6-point game with 6 minutes left in the third quarter, that the game was close late. No, it wasn't. That's not late. That's midway through the third quarter. That's not late. Miami
and it wasn't close early, by the way. Let's throw that in there.
No, Miami, it shouldn't have been a 13-0 lead, I guess, at the half. Miami could have done more, I guess. But that was a Florida team playing for its season in a rivalry game in terrible conditions that mitigated the offensive air power of Miami. I don't understand. Like, have people never watched college football before? A 6-point game midway through the third quarter in which a team ends up winning a game by like 21 points. That wasn't a close game. You know what else indicates that it wasn't a close game? Simple counting stats. We can do the cute little advanced analytics thing that you want, and we can say how it's the most dominant game Pro Football Focus has ever seen since they started doing this stuff. Or you can look at simple counting stats. 0 for 12 on third down conversions. Sure, they made some fourth down.
I think it might have been 0 for 13. Maybe I'm wrong.
My bad. 0 for
no,
13.
I might be wrong too, but it's a velvet cream donut either way.
And also, like, okay, we take the result and we're like, well, Florida's bad. Their offense is bad. Clearly, they can't protect DJ Lagway to save their life. They played at LSU, a good defense, LSU. In fact, everyone trusts the LSU defense. It's the offense that's the issue. You see the protection numbers against LSU? That offensive line held up. In fact, 4 out of the 5 interceptions that DJ Lagway threw against LSU were within a clean pocket. Good protection. It was just DJ Lagway screwing it up. So people are taking the results of what Miami is doing to these teams and then saying, well, maybe Miami isn't that good, which boggles my mind. First off, last year's Miami team, they didn't make the college football playoff. Good team. You have a 10-win season, good team. We do this thing in college football where teams are only good if they're championship good. I think it's pretty clear that Miami is a good team. I think Miami has been tested in 2 rivalry games in bad weather, I might add. Thankfully, these games have been at home, and they did everything that you want to see towards the end. You had complaints about how they finished off Notre Dame. How was this game even tight? Well, they won the game late, and they salted it away, and they got in position for a field goal. They played complimentary football, and then they totally step on Florida's throat. And because a score midway through the third quarter, you think that game was close? Let me tell you something. There is nobody happier right now that the referees screwed that Marty Brown call up. And I know there's been some online talk about Samson Okunlola's helmet coming off. If it's unrelated to the play goes on. So that wasn't the whistle. In fact, Mario Cristobal told you with his own voice, the officials came over and apologized to him. What do you think that game looks like if a bad call isn't made there? It's 20-0, and you have DJ Lagway in predictable passing situations. Brother, that game may get to 45-0. That game gets super ugly. I don't think Billy Napier is still coaching and preparing game plans this week if the right call was made there. So I don't really understand the narrative. Look, Miami is a team that is building. They weren't a CFP team. This is not a ready-made dynasty. We're still asking whether or not they'll have the depth to win a national title, Pete. But Miami is a good football team. Let's let this season play out and decide whether or not they are championship good, rather than already apply a championship level expectation on how these games are going to go because Alabama whacked some Georgia team from 12 years ago when nobody had NIL. You gotta refocus, folks. You gotta view the current state of college football for what it is, and you gotta be happy with 2 dubs over 2 hated rivals in games that there is no way Miami would have won last year. Not with their defense looking like that. And these teams, these offensive Miami Hurricanes, are having fewer drives because they're taking the air out of the ball. Peter, I crunched the numbers today. This offense so far, now it's early.
Crunching them.
I'm sorry, and I'll let you get in. I'm sorry, I am heated.
I love it. This is great.
Totally hijacked this show. All right.
No,
so
listen, the comments are on fire. The comments are seem to be agreeing with a lot of the stuff you're saying. So keep it going. Finish off your thought.
We all know that Miami had a good offense last year, right? The greatest perhaps we've ever seen at the University of Miami. They averaged about 14.8 drives a game. That's high. They scored quick, but also their defense surrendered points quick, especially towards the latter part of the season. So far this season, Miami is averaging 11 offensive drives per game, 4 fewer drives. I can tell you that Miami's offense, if you give them 4 more drives in a game, probably going to put up a few more points, probably a few more touchdowns, probably a score that makes you feel a little bit better. I asked people today, Pete, what made you feel better about Miami? What looked more dominant to you? Last year at Gainesville, dominant performance. You won't get any pushback from me. Or this year. And they all said, last year, very quick. Last year was way more dominant. All right. Stats tell a different tale. But also, you know what the point differential difference between those 2 games are, Pete? 5 points.
Yeah.
It's 5 points. And let's not act that there wasn't a Cam Ward interception and then a huge run by Florida that didn't have people nervous right before halftime. And then what did Miami do? The same thing they did against Notre Dame, win in the middle 8. I'm sorry, I'm fired up. Pete, hop in. Floor is yours.
No, I love it. I love Clutch said post game Mike, and then I said no, midweek Mike. That's gonna be
Mikey.
there you go. You that initial rant that you always seem to have in the beginning of the show is your pent up thoughts that you've been waiting to get off your chest. No, but I think kind of to what you're saying, I think when you look at just how the team is built this year compared to last year, defensively, it's a major upgrade. We understand that. Offensively, though, for those who are maybe concerned right now, and I think certain things we can point to that I would probably agree with some people, and I'll get to that in a second. But I think you watched last year's team, the explosive plays were not an every game thing necessarily. It was a very efficient offense through the air and on the ground, efficient both ways. I think this year you've shown that you can be efficient through the air. That they, obviously that's not how they won the game on Saturday night against the Gators. But I think that ground game is potentially going to give you even a little bit more this year, Mike. It was great last year, but I feel like at times last year it kind of disappeared. Maybe that's just like a revisionist, me looking back on it, but it felt like it went away at times.
I feel like it went away at times by choice. It felt like at times, and Pete, I know you're there with me. It felt like at times, if we go to individual play calls, like there was a game, was it against Duke where we tried to get, or Wake Forest where we tried to get Cam Ward a touchdown reception? It felt like middle of the season, Cam had bailed us out so many times that the team's identity just became Cam do it. And then this offense kind of got focused, whether they want to admit it or not, on winning Cam Ward a Heisman. They are not going to do that with Carson Beck, and Carson Beck does not want to do that. Yes, they got away from the run. Famously, they were up 21-0 at Syracuse, and they got away from the run in a game that they averaged 7 yards per carry. They got too enamored with their play thing because they'd been so desperate to have a quarterback like that at the U. I agree. This is about complementary football. This is about making sure. Did you see the snap counts yesterday? We did not yesterday, on Saturday, did not have a lot of rotation.
No.
You know why? Because those players were fresh as daisies, because the offense was sitting on the ball, playing complementary football. That's what this season is going to be about. Complementary football. It's going to look different. I'm glad you touted Miami's efficiency, because they're efficient enough that if you gave them 4 more drives a game like Miami was averaging last year, the scores may make people feel a little bit better about themselves. People that grade Miami against the 2001 Miami Hurricanes. It's college football. It's hard. The greatest team we've ever seen struggled against Boston College, which wasn't special that year, struggled at Virginia Tech. You're going to get tested. You're going to look back on experiences like we've had against Notre Dame. And I guess if you want to count Florida in there, which is such a misnomer because we absolutely took that ass against Florida. It wasn't even remotely close. And you want to say that, you want to lie to yourself and say that was a close game, then fine. You can't have it both ways. Miami is doing what you've been begging them to do. Step on an opponent's neck. This was a killer instinct that was either incapable of being there because of their defense, or just not there because they got enamored with putting up passing style points. And let me, to your point about the running back room, which I wholeheartedly agree, Miami does not have its best running back yet. Miami's best running back, and Mark Fletcher has been great. Marty Brown has been a revelation. They've been exactly who they were at Green Tree. What the problem with Fletcher is he going to be healthy? They are not surprises if you've been paying attention. Pete, who was the best running back this fall camp? Who was the best running back this spring camp?
Mike, I don't need to answer it. The coaches answered it when they trotted out the running back with the first snaps against Notre Dame.
This offense, even though one got called back from Marty Brown, I'd agree. If you want to criticize Miami's offense, and there's stuff to criticize about Carson Beck, and we can get into that momentarily. I think that if you can make a criticism of Miami's running game, is you still don't have that game-breaking threat. Somebody that can take a 20-yard run once he gets to the next level and hits the afterburners, boom, gone. Miami does have that on their roster, just doesn't have that on the field. A lot of people are going to be slack-jawed when Jordan Lyle actually gets some snaps and starts housing some of these remedial outside looking runs and actually showing you his game-breaking opportunity. So I'm happy. I know Miami has We're 2-0 against our rivals. We're undefeated on the season, and everybody that watches the games understands what's happening in those trenches. And I'm sitting back with a perma smile on my face, Pete, because I know Miami can get a hell of a lot better this season. They have receivers that need to come online. They do not have separation from their wide receivers. They need to get that in the likes of JoJo Trader and Josh Moore. They'll have time to get online, and hopefully someone will step up. Someone in that wide receiver room will step up. And I know they're missing their best running back in Jordan Lyle. So Miami can get a hell of a lot better. And that should scare folks. And that should also be a word of caution to those uninitiated that are making their snap judgments based off of, well, it got a little nervy there. Shut up. Watch this season play out. We got a good football team that can get better. Are we championship good? Hell, I don't know. Feels like that right now, but I'm worried about the depth. If we have an injury to Bain or Mesidor, I'm sure that's a horse of a different color, right? Those are big, scary names to invoke injury concerns about. Miami does not have the depth. There isn't a Bain behind a Bain like there was in 2001. Let's watch this thing together. It's year 4 of a recruiting-based head coach that has done everything he has told you he was going to do. Let's hope we get healthy, that we stay healthy, and we can get better game over game. But I'm up to here already with, and Miami Hurricanes fans are the guiltiest of this, trying to take the air out of what this season's been. This is so refreshing. This is what you have begged for 20 years. Keep your BS opinions to yourself and let it play out. If they lose to FSU, we can have that conversation. But a lot of level-headed folks had Miami with a loss at this point in the season. A lot of level-headed folks. A lot of our friends, Pete, I went to a happy hour. Not a one had them undefeated.
This is what our boy Muhammad, who appreciate his donation here, and you are voicing his point right here.
Thank you, Muhammad. So. I'm sorry. I'm just fired up. I'm like a fire hose of Miami Hurricanes takes. Let me calm down and let's talk about Carson Beck, the quarterback, who had his worst game as a Miami Hurricane, no doubt. I do want to apply the context, and this is something that people take for granted because I guess the weather was worse on Saturday before game time, and rain to Miami folks is different than rain to other folks. Miami folks are the people that are missing this one note more than anybody. The weather on Saturday was crap. Miami has played 2 really soggy games, and I'm not even including the game against USF that was actually delayed for the weather. I'm talking about Notre Dame and Florida. Carson Beck, if you can have a knock against the man, is that he turns the ball over. Well, in those 2 games that were tight in rivalry games with bad weather out there, Carson Beck has had 1 turnover. He has had 1 turnover, and it was a great play made by Cormani McClain, which maybe didn't earn the respect of the Miami locker room, but he earned my respect. I thought they locked Miami's wide receivers down, which is probably another reason why we saw a subpar performance from Carson Beck. Pete, what are your concerns from that performance? Is there anything that can carry over? I know D-Money came out on here on Sunday and started the whole hashtag less zip narrative that is still out there. What is your take on the Carson Beck conversation?
I think being realistic, I think it's something to monitor, right, Mike? Like let's not say it was the same exact guy we saw. Let's also keep in mind the factors of the rain, this is going to be probably the most, and we talked about this on Monday, D and I, this is going to be the most athletic and physically gifted secondary Miami sees. But when I reference things that are of a concern to me offensively, right? Beck, I'm not really worried about that. I gotta say I'm not. If we stack a couple of if we have another performance against FSU where it obviously just doesn't look the same, then I think you can start to have a little bit of a conversation. We can have a dialogue, as Charles Barkley would say. But I think it's more so the lack of which to look at what we saw last year. We didn't see this much last year either, but hitting these deep balls, really, not just deep balls, but explosives. Do they have the guys in the arsenal? And we talked about it at the running back room, but at wide receiver, Keelan Marion, I think, is a guy that can be that. He could have hit one against Notre Dame. he's had a couple. He had a deep ball against it was USF with that nice catch that he had. So I want to see more explosives. Malachi Toney is obviously a dangerous playmaker in a bunch of different ways.
But speed and separation really isn't his game. It's lanes. He's good with yak after he gets the ball, and he's very instinctual. Probably the most instinctual player we've seen at Miami on the offensive side since Santana Moss. But that's where the comparisons to Santana end. He is not the kind of speedster that Santana was.
Yeah, and then I think between that and you need to get some consistency from the tight end room. Alex Bauman has not lived up to expectations, quite frankly. And it's not even like, you're not expecting this guy to go and win the Mackey Award necessarily, but a guy who's been a reliable pass catcher, who's been solid in the blocking game in his previous stop at Tulane, has just not looked comfortable. And I think some of that is getting on track with Beck, but Lofton, I think what we saw last game, Mike, is more what you can expect from him. Right, you get him the ball out in the flat. You saw that nice reception he made on third down for Miami.
Huge play in that game.
Get him the ball in space though, and let him run with it. Right, maybe get him involved in the screen game. We have to. I think calm expectation. I always say this because there's a lot of questions about him, and hey, this guy could be the next Arroyo, and it's not. They're not the same player. They're not the same body type. Arroyo is a 6'4", 250 plus guy who's a 4.5 speed for low 4.6 guy. So he's moving a little bit different. Lofty expectations for Lofton. Lofton is bulky, shorter, can make a guy miss or run you over in a phone booth, right? So he has the short area quicks and also has the ability to run you over, but vertically, I don't see this guy necessarily being a consistent threat in, up the seam, so to speak. That's where I think you would like to get a bomb and more comfortable. You would like to see if a Luka Gilbert can get more in the mix. So I think you need more consistency from that position. And then looking for someone who can be that game changer down the field is a JoJo Trader. I think and I just want to address this, Mike, and I'll hand it back over to you because we're getting a lot of comments about JoJo Trader and Jordan Lyle in specific, both of those guys, because both of them were cleared. Mario said they were cleared. They were both dressed out, going through everything. I think it's both of them similar but different situations, right? Jordan Lyle was, as we said, the starter for game 1 against Florida. Banged up. And I think it's similar because for both of them, this is a very, very long season. It's a 16-game season potentially, right? Maybe 15 to 17-game season. Who knows? If you make the run you want to make, you want guys as healthy as they could possibly be. Number one. So with Lyle, I think it's more that you didn't need him. Why? You were running Fletcher and Marty the other day, and there was no reason at that point. It didn't seem like, because they were just so consistent in the run game. A lot of that was what was happening up front too. But JoJo Trader, we saw him get some snaps against Notre Dame, but he was not the starter necessarily for that one. So I think he has some work to do. Mario said it himself. He said JoJo needs to practice harder. He didn't use that same wording with JoJo with Jordan Lyle. No. So JoJo's got to work himself in the mix here. It's a big bye week for him, and then a big week here leading into FSU. Hopefully, if he does what he's supposed to do this week, gets the same sort of role he had against Notre Dame. I don't know what his official snap count was, but you throw him that deep ball. You see him blocking a little bit, but he was out there. I want to say it was like, maybe off the top of my head, maybe like 15 snaps or something. Nothing crazy, but enough to say, hey, we got a good sample size, but we got there. Mm-hmm. So he's got to, I think, work himself into it, but he could be something that helps unlock what I'm talking about in terms of that player down the field that can get you, a 15, 20, 30 yard play down the field pretty consistently.
If I'm JoJo Trader, and look, I think part of the concerns, there's a lot of quiet things being whispered about. JoJo Trader isn't on the field for a couple of reasons. He was hurt in fall camp, takes time to work himself back in there. And also the game just hasn't been put all together yet for JoJo Trader. And I see that game against Florida, and I see guys, look, CJ Daniels is a ball winner. He's had injuries in his career. He's never going to be a separation guy. I saw joked about in the group chat that maybe Carson should have thrown that ball over the middle, maybe 2 feet higher, and then maybe CJ would have came down with it, because Carson kind of needed that catch there at that moment. But it's unfortunate. You can only get so mad at CJ Daniels, who's made big time game changing plays with his limitations. Again, not a separation guy. Malachi Tony can probably get separation with his route running and his instincts, but in terms of speed, not that guy. If I'm JoJo Trader, I watch that game and I see, man, my quarterback struggled to get the ball downfield because the wide receivers got locked up. I was at that game. There weren't a lot of downfield options for him. Now, you can criticize Carson Beck for not taking some of the available checkdowns. It would help if tight ends, such as the ones that you laid out before, were looking for the ball. That would be great. That was a play that cost Miami points, with Bauman completely turned around, not looking for the football, blocking God knows who downfield. That is at least 7 yards right there. And we know that the football sounds a wee bit different coming off the foot of Carter Davis. And that was
special kicker.
And that's a huge play, because you make that a 3-score football game instead of the 2-score football game at halftime, and it feels totally different. But if I'm JoJo Trader, I see that performance from our wide receivers, and I realize there is a path for me to get on this field. There is something that I can do, and I'm encouraged by how often my quarterback is looking downfield. If I'm JoJo, this is the moment for me to lock in, because there is snaps there for me. Let's talk about Carson Beck looking downfield and not taking the checkdowns. We had, entering the USF game after playing Notre Dame and Bethune, Carson Beck took 8 deep shots in total. And then after USF, he had taken 16 deep shots. So he matched his season total in deep shots just in that USF game. So he's getting more comfortable stretching the field. And I think, again, he got enamored with that. We know Carson Beck likes to stretch the field. We know from his time at Georgia, he's looking for big plays. I think he went big play hunting in bad conditions. He had some available checkdowns that he didn't take. Some he did. Sometimes receivers weren't looking. Hell, Marty Brown, applause to you. That one-handed grab, that was a huge play in that game, because if we didn't get that conversion, that play right then and there, game could have gotten a little hairy. You don't want a rivalry game going into the fourth quarter any kind of close, because at that point, anything can happen. But I will say the weather's been bad for Carson, and a lot of people wrote off his Heisman chances after that game. Boy, you guys don't know how college football works. One good performance again, and Carson Beck is right back in that conversation and probably overtakes Reuben Bain because of the nature of the position he plays. If Miami is where we hope they are, now they're through the tougher non-conference part of their schedule, and they probably have, the toughest game remaining, conventionally speaking, is FSU. Let's give Miami a loss the rest of the way. That means Miami's in the mix for a CFP bye. Miami's in the mix for title contention. That means Carson Beck has taken them to that place. And I defy you to keep Carson Beck out of that room. Carson Beck's going to have to do what he did against Florida 3 more times to be written off. Carson Beck is a good player. We've seen it in practice. I think there's a combination of things there. Went up against a good defense that totally locked down our receivers, did not provide separation. He's played in bad conditions. I think he's going to be okay. I have faith in Carson Beck also not going big game hunting to the degree that Cam Ward did. We do a lot of revisionist history with Cam Ward that is a little frustrating, and it makes me sound like a Cam Ward hater, even though Cam Ward is my second favorite player in the NFL. I'm basically a Titans fan because I love Cam Ward. Cam Ward is a special talent. They are totally different players, Carson Beck and Cam Ward. Cam Ward does things that'll just have you open mouth and flabbergasted, things that don't make sense. But part of what goes into that is he's also going to make some bad turnovers in trying to make those big plays, and you got to live with them. Carson Beck, not a perfect player, not without his healthy amount of interceptions. Some would say unhealthy amount of interceptions, but he's a different player, and he does not care about the personal accolades. And I don't think this staff is going to be enamored with his skill set the way that they were with Cam Ward, where kind of the goal was, yeah, we want to get into the CFP, but let's get Cam in New York as well. Again, I think if you got folks on truth serum, they'd kind of admit that seeped into their play calling a little bit. Carson Beck has the right attitude at that position in terms of national championship type of mentality, and that he's going to do what the team needs, and he will not make a fuss over it. He knows what the standard is from playing over at Georgia. He knows what this is supposed to look like. He is so mature. The kid grew up this offseason big time. Had the pleasure to speak to his family multiple times. This is a young man that matured. There's a young man that is about the main thing, which is getting Miami back, which is winning these big games. Carson Beck, when it comes to win-loss record, Pete, he wins all these big games. He doesn't lose very many of them. Hell, he was somehow the only quarterback to go into a game as a ranked favorite against Georgia Tech and live to tell the tale by playing exceptionally well, by the way. So I'd cool it. I think this is the lowest the Carson Beck stock is going to be all season long, and I'm buying right now. I think the young man is still on his way to New York. Now, hopefully, the narrative around defensive players isn't such that we can't get Ruben Bain out there too, because I would love Hurricane Bain to be out there, because for me, it's no question who the best player in the nation has been so far. It's just not a player that is historically recognized by the Heisman Committee.
Canes Cats Heat says stop pushing for Heisman Beck or for Carson Beck for Heisman, Ruben Bain for Heisman only. I think I think we want all of them there, but to the point
guys,
of
I'm not pushing. The media is going to do that. He's a quarterback, and if Miami is where we think they're going to be come Heisman time, the media is going to put Carson Beck in that room. We know it's just historical data when it comes to the Isla Canaria avatar is D Money there, Pete.
What's up? Can you guys hear me, or am I like a robot?
This is hilarious. Yes, we can hear you, D.
Can you hear me, or am I like a robot? How do I sound?
Yeah,
you sound good.
You sound fine.
Oh, great. What's up? How we doing?
Good, Pete. D, you're just Islas Canarias avatar right now, which I guess would give you the opportunity to do a live read for them, and then you can give us your thoughts. I've been pretty animated right now. I'm pretty fired up. It's midweek Mikey with postgame Pete.
Listen, I'm pretty fired up about Islas Canarias Express, #1 Cuban restaurant on the planet. I'm here in the island of Paros in Greece, and I've been asking around about the best Cuban food on the planet, and they agree. Islas Canarias Express, Dayland Mall Dining Pavilion. This is a 40-plus year establishment in Miami-Dade County, but is now available in the Dayland Mall Dining Pavilion. All the classics, plus some new stuff, Cubaritos, you name it, they got it at the Islas Canarias Cuban Express. But other than that, feeling great. How you doing?
We're doing
fantastic.
fantastic.
Is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, pretty
what are you
fired up.
About?
Pretty fired up just about like uninformed Miami Hurricanes takes, and I think that people need to hit the decompression button a little bit and be really thrilled with what they've seen. We just chewed on the Carson Beck stuff. I think some of the criticisms are fair, but I'm saying that I'm buying all the Carson Beck stock right now. I think there were reasons for why that game went the way that it did. I think that, credit to the opponent, the corners for Florida were really, really good, and Miami doesn't have the guys that can get the separation out on the field just yet. The weather was exceptionally bad over the last month that Carson Beck has had. We've seen it out there in practice. I trust Carson Beck with this team. I think he's going to play the type of game that this team needs him to play to get to ultimately where they want to go. And they have a ceiling, this team, and if they don't meet that ceiling, it ain't going to be Carson Beck. That's the reason why. I'll tell you that much.
No, I feel good about him. I think this week against Florida State, or the 2 weeks leading up to Florida State, I think he's going to be locking in. Not that he wasn't locked in against Florida, but he wants to play at a high level. So I think going against an opponent like Florida State, I mean, we haven't talked a lot about Florida State yet, and we have a whole nother show to talk about that, plus the next 10 days. But their defense, I am not sold one iota on it. I think it's probably terrible. We don't know yet because it's too early, but, I don't know why people forget that these guys were one of the worst defensive teams in the country last year, and then really didn't bring in anybody of note. I don't think any of their pass rushers have done anything. Their secondary is significantly less talented than it was last year when they had a lot of NFL guys. So I'm not sure why we have think that they're going to play good defense at all. And I think that's going to be a major advantage for Carson Beck going against really, I mean, I thought the Gators were overrated on defense, but the Noles are way worse. I mean, the Seminoles might be one of the least talented teams we play on defense. So maybe I'm wrong. I mean, we don't know. It's a little bit of an unknown because they got a new coordinator, some new players, but I do not see a tremendous amount of talent on defense, particularly their pass rush and their secondary. So I think a guy like Carson Beck, his Heisman campaign, which I know he doesn't care about really, but it took a little bit of a hit. I could see him having a monster game against FSU just because they do lack defensive talent. He's been sitting on this one for a little bit. And he's going to be fired up.
If I'm an NFL GM, I actually watch what Carson Beck has done on the totality of the month, and I'm encouraged by how good he has navigated the bad weather. Bad weather is a thing that pops up in the NFL. Tom Brady's the greatest bad weather quarterback we've ever seen. I'm not comparing Carson Beck to that. Absolutely not. But I'd say Carson Beck, for someone that came in with a bit of a turnover buzz around him, having only turned the ball over one time in two really soggy games against Notre Dame and Florida, when those are defenses that I know the discussion around Notre Dame's defense has shifted a little bit because they've been struggling without Al Golden, but talented secondary, no doubt. Talented secondary for Florida, no doubt. And he's played clean games. He's not turned the ball over. And I am encouraged by him looking for the big play. To an earlier point that was made, D, before you got here and became a talking Islas Canarias avatar, which is still very funny to look at, is the injury discussion for Miami, that the specter of that is always going to be a big issue, right? We mentioned there isn't a Reuben Bain backing up a Reuben Bain. This isn't 0-1 where if Clinton Portis goes out, Willis McGahee goes in. We don't have that just yet. But 1 through 22, we're pretty solid. And I think lost in all of this is Miami. Their ceiling is higher than what they've shown. Miami doesn't have their best running back out there on the field in Jordan Lyle. He's the most explosive running back that they have. And there are wide receivers that are going to develop that can get separation, that can add an extra dimension to this Miami football team. And that will make Carson Beck look better as well.
I was laughing when D was talking because as Johnny Green comments, he says, Florida defense is pretty good, D-Money. Pete, hop in there. Because you could take this guy to any country in the world and he's still talking about Florida State and Florida's defenses and their talent level. But D, you were saying that Florida's defense wasn't very good?
No, I mean, not really. I mean, they're good compared to their offense. But, I mean, it's not like they got a ton of talent that you get excited. I mean, who's the best player on defense right now?
I mean, that's going to be probably the best secondary. Them and Notre Dame are the two best secondaries Miami's going to face this year, from a talent perspective.
Tariq Sapp
right?
should have been wearing red stripes and one of those hats with the red ball on top. Because could you find him around Markel Bell?
Well, whatever they did, whatever they did limited Miami to 26 points.
Yeah.
Was Brian Norcross their defensive coordinator? Because I think the torrential downpour limited us to that amount of points. I don't know of anything they did.
I mean, D-Money, sometimes there are fluky. Credit. Yeah, I would give them credit. Sometimes there are fluky performances.
Because they did the same thing to your boy Nussmeier, by the way.
They did. That's a good defense, dude. It looked violent down there. Miami's offensive line, yeah, they got pushed and they shoved piles, no doubt. Florida was down 3 impact defensive linemen and still fought admirably on that defensive side of the ball. Trust me, I do not want to give credit to the Gators. That defense absolutely fought like their season was on the line. They met the moment, no doubt.
They might quit the rest of the year, so like they could suck the rest of the year. But like that's
but
that was
100%
up front on their D line.
100%.
I mean, not necessarily on their D line against us, but like they were physical as a whole. As a
not gonna let my eyes lie to me.
We got D dropped off.
He dropped off. I'm not gonna let my eyes lie to me.
He got so disgusted. Disgusted.
I saw 2 rivalry games with inspired opponents that Notre Dame is a different discussion because Notre Dame was a bit more confusing as to why does this look like that. And I'm again throwing out the gambit that say if I'm too entertained that Miami quote unquote struggled a little bit with Florida, which I don't believe. I think they absolutely waxed them. And I think it's a bad faith argument just because people want to invoke the fact that it was a 1-score game with Florida ball midway through the third quarter. It's a bit of a BS statement to have that coat your analysis. But they played inspired football. They played really well defensively, and they had a chicken bleep mentality on offense. That was the game plan because they did not trust DJ Lagway, who went from 5 interceptions to 0, in part because they wanted that ball out quick, and also in part because that ball had to come out quick because of the pressure, the unprecedented in the PFF era pressure that Miami was getting at. But every game is its own thing, and I'm right there with you, Pete. People are going to look back on that Florida performance and say, well, they struggled with Florida, and here Florida is with 4 wins on the season, and they're not bowl eligible. But if you were there, that was a Waterloo game for Florida. Their effort matched the moment. There isn't this huge talent disparity between the teams, even though it played out differently than that. I mean, you guys are obsessed with recruiting rankings. You've seen the classes. The difference isn't recruiting. The difference is technique. The difference is off-season regimen. It's portal, but it isn't the talent that's on the field largely. There isn't much difference between Miami, Notre Dame, and Florida when it comes to talent, and yet one team looked like they physically manhandled the other teams a hell of a lot more.
I think Miami's trench talent is better.
Pete and Mike,
without a doubt.
Is there one? Tell me one player on U.S. defense that would start on Miami's defense. A single player.
Our boy who was hurt, Caleb Banks.
Yeah.
Our boy who was hurt.
Yeah,
our
Banks.
boy who was hurt. Exactly.
Hey, but look, that I've been on. I've been on Banks since last year.
Would he not start?
We were talking about Banks being hurt. We were talking about Banks being hurt entering last year's game against Miami. Banks is a good player, man. He looks the part.
Yeah, we're always talking about being hurt or talking about some character stuff or one thing or the other. He probably wouldn't have kicked out by now. So the answer is he didn't play. So none of those guys on that defense would have started on our defense.
So it has nothing to do
so
with
that's
hold on. So it's not the talent then.
Where was he? He must have been hiding in the same place as Tyreek Sapp because I didn't see him on Saturday, nor did I see him. Nor did I see him last. Did he play in last year's game? I don't remember him in that one.
Let's say D-Money. Let's say.
Very talented. Leave it at that. It's like the Goodfellas. It's like Joe Pesci when the girlfriend says that she finds Nat King Cole attractive. He's very talented. Leave it at that. He's very talented.
So D though, who's gonna get drafted higher, him or one of Miami's interior defensive linemen?
Drafted? I don't know. He'll get picked high. He didn't play. He didn't play in the game. He did not play in the game.
D-Money, let's say Billy Napier gets fired, and then you have that. We can assume that's coming at some point. And you have the portal period of 30 days for Florida Gators. I think that Miami's going to be interested in a handful of those players. And I think if you have LJ McCray in an offseason program for Miami, knowing exactly how highly this Miami staff thought of LJ McCray in their recruiting pursuit of the young man, I think he'd have a pretty good shot of getting snap counts on this Miami defense.
So the two guys we're talking about either did not play in the game, both of them did not play in the game. One of them has not played at all. Mm-hmm. And these are the two guys we're talking about. So the guys that we saw on Saturday,
not bad either.
He's not bad. He'd be like our fourth. He'd be our third or fourth guy. So again, that's what I'm saying. And that's the defense. The offense put up less yards than Bethune. So I think we could stop the charade that these guys had talent. I was worried about this game just because college football, we lose to bad teams all the time. But now that the story's been told, I mean, these guys have sucked the whole time. Notre Dame, Notre Dame will kill these guys. Notre Dame would beat FSU by 10 if they played on Saturday. Like, these teams are down. Mario has buried these teams in recruiting, and I think we're starting to see that. We've got to finish the job next week. But I expect there to be a significant talent discrepancy between Miami and Florida State, just like there was between Miami and Florida, just like there was between Miami and USF. Those three other schools probably closer gap together than what Miami is with the others.
What do you think about Denson as a nickel?
Garbage. The guy sucks. Denton. First of all, Denton was getting pancaked by Malachi Tony.
I would take Keontae Scott.
Denson.
Keontae Scott. It's not even comparison. Denson didn't do it. Denson was getting pancaked all day.
I'll take Cormani. I'm not saying he starts, but I'll take Cormani.
Cormani was impressive. He was.
Carmani, man. Look what we're talking about here. Good job, Carmani.
So what?
I think
he didn't make a nice play?
His social media. I'll take his social media manager.
He didn't make a nice play?
I'll take his social media manager. Whoever wrote that tweet about about Inez Cooper, that very sportsman-like tweet. Did you see that tweet, Mike?
Yeah,
Come on.
I actually have thoughts on that tweet. Look,
And then he did community service yesterday, which it was
yeah, I mean, he might be getting it. Look, I think he burned his bridges here in Miami when you consider how he handled that. But good for the young man. It does seem like he matured this week. He was a good player on that field on Saturday. He made a massive play for his team that happened in a spot on the field where his team needed that kind of turnover. It was an individual effort. And when he had every right to show his immaturity because our players were talking that crap on social media, he decided to go high road. I think that he did a lot for himself this week because he's probably not going to be a Florida Gator for the rest of his collegiate career, depending on what happens with Billy Napier. I think a lot of teams are paying attention to how he responded to this week, both the game and the aftermath, and are coming away with like, okay, this is a sign for Cormani to mature. And I think we have to keep in mind that these are teenagers. Cormani approached his recruitment so immaturely that there was really nowhere to go but up. And then he proved to you in Colorado, hell, the bottom is a lot deeper than you thought. So I think that it's an encouraging story, and I'm not going to take shots at the young man just because of what he did to us. I think he was pretty impressive over the last few days.
Very classy. You're like what's that Mr. Peanut with the monocle and the top hat and the cane. Very classy. We're gonna have Mike Ryan edited on the Mr. Peanut for his very classy response. You should be writing tweets for Kamani McLean in the future. He's got a very good tweet writer currently, but you'd be a tremendous substitute if that guy ever calls out sick. But no, you know what? I want to get props. I agree with you. I don't want to. The kid, he's improved. Obviously, he's gotten better on the field. He could have gone like where he wasn't playing football at all, and he's out here playing, giving his family a chance. So I'm not going to hate on Kamani. Obviously, he would be our 17th best corner, but I salute him for doing what he's doing.
He would not be our 17th corner.
He'd be up there. He'd be up there, and it was a great effort. And he's going to get more opportunities, especially if he keeps playing like that. So I think it'll be interesting to see. Again, I think that anybody that's kind of fantasy booking players that could maybe potentially join our roster when that portal stuff opens, I don't think Cormani's atop the list, but I do think LJ McCray would get some serious consideration from Miami. So to answer your question, that's two players that we answered your question about. I think Banks.
But he wouldn't play. Wait, hold on. McCray didn't play. So you're saying McLean who's McLean playing over on our team?
He's probably not starting on either of the two sides right now, which actually, you know what? Let's dump the Cormani McLean conversation and talk about one of the corners here. There's a bit of an invisible man on our stat sheet, and it's Xavier Lucas. It's hard to tell exactly how much he's affecting these games, because he's not really getting challenged.